Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a lovely December day here in suburban Chicago. The weather is cool, but not terrible. I mean, it is 33 degrees according to my home thermometer. So that would put it at 0 degrees Celsius or 1 degree Celsius. Very chilly, but lovely. Given that it's December and I did not finish everything thinking about all the different Christmas movies when we last spoke, I thought today I would try again to talk a bit about some more Christmas movies and give you another theme storm. So this is Christmas Movie Games Theme Storm Part 2. Now, last time I talked about a bunch of really high-end classic Christmas movies, and I'm intending to do the same here, but we're going to get a little bit more granular. So some of these movies you might not have seen or be as familiar with, or I don't know, if some of my listeners don't celebrate Christmas, you maybe haven't seen any of the movies I've been doing in these last episodes, in which case, my apologies. Nonetheless, it's a big part of my family's winter celebration, so there we are. Jumping into Christmas Movie Theme Storm Part 2. Now, the obvious one that would make a great board game is Die Hard. Of course, there is a Die Hard board game, which I have not played. So, first off, I haven't played it, so that's kind of a bummer because it's really hard for me to... It's weird to do a theme storm thinking about how I would make a movie out of a game that has... a game out of a movie that has a game already. That said, having not played it and not really explored it at all, I don't feel too uncomfortable just saying, I'm gonna give it a try anyway. So at the center idea of Die Hard, there's a couple elements. One, there is an elaborate heist involving tricking the police and holding hostages and killing hostages and stealing a lot of money. That's part one. Part two is there is a police officer, a renegade, crazy police officer inside the building who is the only one who can stop these criminals from stealing things. So these are the two different narrative focuses you have. And then I guess you also have the sleazy reporter trying to get the story, and you have the mom concerned about her children. These are less significant plot points, I think. My guess is most players want to be John McClane saving Nakatomi Tower from the villains led by Hans Gruber, which means that probably the Die Hard board game is the players as John McClane. Is it? I'm kind of curious to see. Are all the players John McClane somehow? Are there up to 4 Johns McClane, like the old Transformers game where all the players are Optimus Prime somehow? Or is it that they introduce other characters that you can be? You can be the wife, you can be the limo driver, you can be, I don't know who else, resisting the villains. Or is it a 1v many game where the one is the player and the many are all of the criminals? That seems more likely. In which case then does it become a kind of hidden movement game, sort of like Spectre Ops? That seems like a good approach. You could have different levels and different quadrants and goals that the criminals are trying to accomplish. So the criminals are trying to accomplish a series of goals, and in order to keep it interesting and keep it difficult for the protagonist, the criminals get a series of goals that they have to accomplish that are kind of related to the ideas of the movie, but they don't have to happen in a certain order. I mean, they have to happen in a certain order, but they don't have to happen in the same order every play. It would have to be randomized. And then at the same time, they're hunting the hero, because the hero gets to disrupt their plans and maybe intervene by like bringing the police in or things like that. That would be my game. It would be a 1 versus many game. You'd need at least 3 players. I guess you could have just 2 players, 1 player playing all of the villains. But you'd always have to have at least like 4 villains. And so in a 1 versus 1 game, the player playing the villains would have a lot more to do, I think, than the hero. Yeah, I think there's some potential there. Now this makes me want to go and investigate the Die Hard board game and see how it actually works. What do you actually do? If they hired me to make a Die Hard board game and I pitched the game I just did, how close is that to the game that they've actually published? I don't know. I'm going to go find out and let you know in a future podcast, I imagine. But let's see, are there other game models that would work for Die Hard. It really is a hidden movement game, so I think that's a very tight one. There is maybe a hostage negotiator element. You could have the Die Hard hostage negotiator expansion. The problem with that is that Hans Gruber is a liar and he's not actually interested in negotiating at all, right? He's got a whole plan in which the negotiator is just part of this elaborate plan. So I'm not sure the negotiator part makes a lot of sense. I can't think of any other versions of Die Hard that would work right now, and I've got a couple more games to talk about, so let's move on. That was Die Hard Themestorm, thinking about it as a hidden movement game. Now, the second game I want to talk about would be A Christmas Story. A Christmas Story is, of course, the tale of Gene Shepard's childhood, a series of anecdotes from his childhood kind of melded into a melange of stories about Christmas, in which we learn about his brother and his father and his mother and various travails from during his childhood, which then kind of meld into a single tale. Now, Shepard's writing voice is pretty distinct and makes for really good storytelling. And the vignettes are excellent as little tales of the experience that work pretty well. The through line of getting the Red Ryder BB gun is excellent. But all in all, it's really hard to see how the story could translate into a game. I mean, if you just want to make A Christmas Story, the board game, it would you probably could use any number of mass market clone models. I'm sure there is a Christmas Story trivia game, and I'm sure there is a Christmas Story Trouble type simple exchange game. But those don't really fit what I'm interested in here. So what is the core idea, the core notion of the Christmas Story? Well, first it's nostalgia. So a pining for a time when things were simpler, even if more difficult, right? Because Gene Shepard grew up in the Depression, so the story is tinged with poverty, even as the characters get along okay. But right, the desperation that occurs when Ralphie discovers that his glasses are broken, right? Because having to replace glasses is a big deal. So that's part of it. Again, the idea of children growing up, of family growth, these are interesting and crucial things. So I think those things together suggest to me that should be a game that involves some level of storytelling or anecdote building. Perhaps it becomes a storytelling game where, first off, the graphic design and art style make it look like a 1950s Scrabble or 1950s game. So pick period-specific kinds of art styles and font choices that evoke products of the era, of course, with a modern sense of graphic design. And then I think it would be a party/storytelling game in which the elements that prompt you to tell your story are drawn from the game. You know, a family memory about food, disaster, financial hardship, love, a fight, the time you got in trouble over something, the times that mom saved you from getting in trouble, neighbors, tales about neighbors. Like, it feels like you'd have some sort of storytelling prompt, and then maybe other people could, maybe you have a storytelling prompt, and then someone else around the table offers in a modifier that augments how you have to tell the story. Then you tell the story, and maybe you tell half the story, and then people have to guess how it ends. The question is, are you telling a real story or are you making one up? I think you're telling a real story. This is a family bonding game. It would be called Our Christmas Story. You could still have Ralphie on the face, but that would be my idea for how to take the essence of A Christmas Story and make it into a game. I don't know how you'd make it into a board game unless you pick one part of the movie and make that a board game, like Ralphie versus the bully, Scut Farkus. But I don't know how you make that a game, because it's not meant to be an even fight, and Scut Farkus doesn't even fight him, really. He throws one snowball, and then Ralphie goes bananas and knocks him down. I don't know how you make a game out of it except in the kind of way that I've suggested. I'd be interested to hear your ideas, readers. How would you make a game out of A Christmas Story? The third movie I wanted to mention, I think, does have a little bit more potential than A Christmas Story to become an interesting game. And this is Jingle All the Way, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Sinbad movie about mediocre parents trying to find the ultimate Christmas toy. Now, this is a thing that happens every year. Of course, there is a thing that all the kids want or some number of kids want, and it's really hard to find, and you read about parents punching each other out in aisles over it or paying exorbitant amounts. I imagine this year there's a lot of kids hoping they'll get a PlayStation 5, even though they're extremely hard to come by and blah, 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 blah. So obviously this is a cultural currency that resonates, and I think Jingle All the Way would be the way to do this. Maybe you pick two other minor characters. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I don't recall if there are other people that show up in multiple places looking for this toy other than Arnold and Sinbad. But it makes sense that there would be. So you could certainly have multiple players playing desperate parents trying to find this one toy. And then it would be a kind of race game with a heavy element of luck and a heavy element of take that, right? So it's a race game in that the way I imagine it, there's a bunch of different places you can go shopping, and you expend time to get places, so you get a certain amount of time for each turn. And when you spend time, you either go to a store. This would be a pretty simple game. You either go to a store or you rifle through the stock by drawing cards off a deck. And each store would have to have a pretty big deck, I think, to make it interesting. So you draw cards, rifling off, taking things off the deck. Maybe you would have some amount of money that you could spend. And there would be other toys that would get you some Christmas love from your child. But the only way to win, you only win if you get the most Christmas love and no one else found the toy. If somebody else finds the toy, then they win, regardless of how much other Christmas love you earned. But you could, if you spend all your money on Christmas love and then find the toy, then you won't have the money to buy the toy, perhaps. It's really dark. So if there were each store that you could go to has a deck of cards, and there is a timing element for how long it takes you to go back home or go to the bank and get more money or go to another store, then each player is using some time to do searching. And I like the idea that maybe it's played in 5-minute increments or 10-minute increments. So the board is divided up by how long it takes you to go to a place. And when you get to a store, like, your turns are relatively quick. You do this, do that, do this, do that. And one of the things is if you go to a store and each 5-minute increment, you can draw one card off the top of the store to look for the toy. Once you find it, then you could run home. Yeah, so you find it and then you have to head home. And of course there's a take that element where the other parents are trying to steal the toy from you. I don't know how that part would work so much. I mean, maybe while you're in the store they could steal it, but it seems like there's some potential there for stealing things from each other as part of the narrative story. So it'd be a pretty simple game. You're searching decks of cards for the present. If you find the present, then you have to try to get back home. Once you find the present, there would have to be a thing where, like, the present is big enough that you can't really hide that you have it. So once you have it, then everybody else can see you and they could try to steal it from you. The person who makes it to their house with the present wins the game. Otherwise, if the time runs out, then everybody has to go home, and whoever has the most love that they've purchased wins. I don't know, there might have to be a thing where you have to get home on time too, that if you're late, having the present doesn't work because you missed the present opening or something. It's really dark as an idea. I don't think it would be all that fun. That's my idea for how you might play Jingle All the Way. I think I have time for one more movie, so I'll use another one that very few people have seen, and I don't know why, because it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. There's a Steve Martin movie written by Nora Ephron that called Mixed Nuts. And this movie is generally reviled. People talk about it being a bad movie, and I don't really understand why. It's a little slow at the start, but the premise is that there is a self-help or a suicide hotline or depression hotline, and they are going to lose their apartment. And so the main character is trying to find money to raise so that they don't have to lose the place where they are holding their business. Meanwhile, the people around there, it's a character-driven comedy, so the people who are around the place are funny. And there's different interactions. There's a couple who's having marital troubles. There's a sort of lonely guy from the first floor. There is a lonely woman who is just looking for company. There is anyway, it's a wide variety of wacky characters, hence the title, Mixed Nuts. And I think it's very funny. But again, how do you make this into a game? I mean, a game about a suicide hotline is not, it's not what you want. It could be a game about wacky characters, the game of strange Christmas parties. This might be a thing. What if you did an element where you are trying to develop a group of people to come to this party that are the widest variety of characters you can find. And so you're collecting attributes, as you find characters, you're looking for attributes that suggest a wider variety of interests, of backgrounds, of personality quirks, of physical type, of age. So you sort of look at how all of these things interrelate, and then you choose the one that you think, or then you choose one at a time, and your goal is to sort of build this elaborate group of people to come to this Christmas party. Problem is, that's not at all what the movie's about. The movie's about loneliness and the holidays and connection, and it's a weird and funny movie that's enjoyable, but not at all about the other things I just said. So it really leads me to ask sort of the basic question: this isn't a game this isn't a movie you can make a game out of, which is probably also true of A Christmas Story. I didn't let that stop me. Well, there are a variety of other Christmas movies around, though which ones are available or which ones might be worth making a game for, I'm not sure. I think this will probably be the end of this series, but if you have ideas for other Christmas movies that would make interesting games, or other ways games could be created out of Christmas movies, head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and let me know what those ideas are. If you have comments or questions about the podcast, do reach out, Brendan at Rattlebox Games, or head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and post in our forum there. I'm a little behind schedule, so I'm not sure if I'm going to make my goal of 100 episodes this year, because it's already December 8th and I still have 10 episodes to go. Even doing 3 a week, that puts me right up to the end of the year, which is a little later than I usually publish. I usually stop right around when my semester ends. So we'll see. I might not make it to 200 episodes. That might happen in January. The big difference, though, is that because my January course is not taught on campus, it's going to be taught from home this semester. It'll be different. Well, thank you for joining me on my walk today. I appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts on Christmas movies. I look forward to our next walk together, and until then, I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.